When building reports using sales order processing data, we should take into consideration the statuses, all the different status fields to help us narrow down and restrict to just the data we want to see. They all have very important meanings, so let's take a look at what each of those mean now. There are 8 status fields that exist inside of the sales order processing data. I'm in Excel 2016, and I'm going to use the query editor of Get and Transform, used to be called Power Query, to get to my SQL data. So I'm going to go to Data, and I'll click on New Query under Get and Transform. I'll get it from my database, and I'll get it from SQL Server. And the name of my server is BusyBee, and the name of my database is 1. If you're not familiar with what these are, you should talk with your partner or your IT person to help you out, because you also will need to have security. Now, I've accessed this many times, this database, so it's remembered that I have rights. I'm using my Active Directory login, and I have rights to everything in this SQL Server, so it's not prompting me for a user login right here. And I see all of my views and my tables inside of my this particular database on my BusyBee server. So I'm going to look for the sales line items. So I'll just type in sales and I can narrow it down. And if I highlight it, I can see a preview over on the right. And there it is. So I can make sure that is indeed the one I want. So I'm going to choose to edit that one. And the query editor will open and my data will be displayed in it. So I could actually start doing a little bit of data modeling. In the bottom left corner, you'll see this particular view. It's a native view inside of GP. It's not anything that I've added. It's the view that the Excel refreshable reports use. It has 564 columns. That is way too much to deal with. So I want to narrow that down. On the home menu, on the ribbon here, I'm going to choose columns, and I'll get a window. It makes it a lot easier to figure out the columns I want. So I'm just going to grab a few, not very many, and go ahead and click OK, and this will narrow down the list of what I'm looking at. So now let's go back in and add those statuses. Because I'm in Power Query, it tracks all of my applied steps. So I'm going to use the gear here and open that choose column window back up, and I can now include those status columns. So like I did when I pulled up the table, I'm just going to type in the word status and I'll see all the status types. Here are the 8. The last 2 have to do with workflow, if you have workflow implemented, and I do not have it implemented on this machine, so I'm not going to select those 2. But I do want to point out that we do have a couple of workflows here. One is the status credit limit and the quote. Those are default workflows that are out there. So I'm going to go ahead and select the other remaining ones and go ahead and click OK. And let's start from the right to the and then work our way back left, and then we'll kind of take a view of what these are. The first one is the void status. So we know in sales order processing, if we have done some work with transactions, or if we've printed it, we can't just go in and delete it. So we void it. So voided transactions are going to show up in the database, and we want to make sure we exclude those. So anytime you're dealing with data, you're going to want to exclude those. If I'm going to build the report in Excel here, and this is the exact same query editor with just a few less features than is in Power BI, so it would work here as well. I'm going to go ahead and unmark voided and click OK, and now all the voids are done. And I could even come in and right mouse click on this step and change the name to remove voids. And now I can remove that void status column because it does the refresh in these steps, so it'll remove the void and then it'll remove the column. All right, so now we're down to the sales document status column. Now the sales document status column, if I were to click on this, you could see there are a variety of options here, including new and complete. The other ones have to do with the advanced distribution. So if you're using the advanced distribution feature, you could set these and choose which one you want to use, and then you could monitor where some of your steps are. That's what that one is all about. Now, the purchasing status is going to be determined on how you have your sales document set up. So here's an order I have, and I'm going to open this up, and you can see I have it set to back order. The quantity is set to back order. So I have one on order, and I'm telling it that that one is going to go to a back order. And that tells me that I need to order, actually, let me pull it back up. I have the, it's set to back order. And if I were to click on the SOP pop link, you can see that I need to purchase that. That's the status, as opposed to it being in something in stock. And so that is why I could see some that say need to purchase, or maybe none, that there is no purchasing status because I have enough on hand. I don't need to worry about those. So that's what the purchasing status one is. I'm going to go ahead and remove these two columns just to make it a little easier for us as we move along. Okay, so here is what made me want to do this blog. So we have posting status and we have document status. Let's start with document status, and I'm going to tell it to just show me posted activity for a moment. Okay, so when I look at posted activity, you can see in some cases it says unposted and posted here in the status. But what I'm looking at are all of the documents that have been moved to history. So perhaps a back order has been turned into an order, which was turned into an invoice, and the invoice could be open or closed, it doesn't matter. But the back order itself has been moved to history. And so that's why under document status, it says the back order is listed there. So if it is considered open, meaning when I am in the sales order or sales transaction entry, if I could pull it up from this lookup list, that document status is going to be set to, get all document types. If it's in this list, that would show up if I choose unposted. If it's in history and it doesn't show up in this list, then that means the status is going to be considered posted for document status. So let's get rid of that filter. And now we have the posting status. So now this time I'm going to do the same thing and select posted. And what you're going to notice is my SOP type then only shows invoices and returns. And that's because an invoice and a return are the only things that can post to receivables, inventory, and therefore general ledger. So the posting status is only going to include invoices and returns, and the document status is going to be whether or not it's considered open or work, whichever one you want to call it, versus history. So that's the difference between these two. If you're wanting to look at sales information, you don't need to then worry about going in and saying, okay, if I want to look at it by how much we've sold, I want to get rid of my quotes, my orders, and my back orders. I don't need to worry about removing those removing those individually by type. I can just come over to posting status and remove them by clicking show me posted only. So that's the difference between these two statuses, even though they both say posted and unposted. That was a lot of information in a short length of time, but I certainly hope this helps.